Right, listen. There is an island, vast, frozen, and sparsely populated, that most people rarely think about. Yet, quietly, steadily, almost invisibly, it is becoming one of the most strategically important places on Earth. Not because of what is happening there today, but because of what is beginning to emerge beneath the ice. This is Greenland. And if you want to understand how the next era of geopolitics might unfold, you need to take a wider look at this land. Because Greenland is no longer just a geographic curiosity, it is becoming a strategic frontier. And the question is no longer whether the world will pay attention. The question is who will shape its future. So let's speak the untold. For centuries, Greenland sat on the margins of global strategy, too cold, too remote, too difficult to develop. Even today, its population is smaller than many towns, roughly 56,000 people, spread across a landmass larger than Western Europe. But geography has a way of becoming important when the world changes. And the world is changing fast because Greenland is not just ice, it is location, it is resources, and increasingly it is access. Look at a globe from above the North Pole instead of the equator. Suddenly, Greenland doesn't feel remote at all. It sits between North America, Europe, Russia. It is positioned near emerging Arctic shipping routes that could dramatically shorten transit times between Asia and the West. Routes that may one day rival the Suez Canal in importance. As Arctic ice retreats, passages once locked by nature are becoming navigable for longer periods each year. This is not speculation anymore, it is already happening, and when trade routes shift, power shifts with them. Always has. Now consider something else. The United States has maintained a military presence in Greenland for decades, not by accident, but because early warning radar systems positioned there can monitor missile trajectories across the polar region. In strategic terms, Greenland is a watchtower, a silent one, but invaluable. As great power competition quietly intensifies, locations that offer visibility and reach become priceless. And you don't need to imagine conflict to understand this. Military planners think in decades. They prepare long before tensions escalate. Greenland is part of that long view. But geography alone is not what is drawing attention, it is what lies on the ground. Greenland is believed to hold significant deposits of rare earth elements, the materials that power modern technology. Electric vehicles, wind turbines, advanced electronics, defense systems. Remember something important, the future economy is mineral intensive. Countries are no longer competing only for oil fields, they are competing for the materials of electrification and digitization. And right now, global supply chains for many of these minerals are highly concentrated. That concentration makes governments nervous. So when a new potential source appears, it becomes strategic overnight. Greenland is one of those sources. You may remember a moment a few years ago that many people treated as a joke when the United States expressed interest in purchasing Greenland. It sounded absurd, almost comedic, but serious policymakers were not laughing because the idea revealed something deeper. Greenland isn't being viewed as territory, it's being viewed as leverage. And that tells us everything. Today, multiple global players are increasing their economic and diplomatic engagement across the Arctic region, not loudly, not dramatically, but persistently. Infrastructure discussions, mining proposals, research investments, strategic partnerships, these are early signals of long-term positioning. Here is where the story becomes more complex. The very process making Greenland more accessible is climate change. Melting ice exposes minerals, longer ice-free seasons enable shipping, but it also raises profound environmental risks. Mining in fragile Arctic ecosystems is not a trivial decision, nor is building industrial infrastructure in a region already experiencing rapid ecological transformation. Greenland now faces a dilemma. many resource-rich regions confront pursue development and economic independence, or preserve environmental stability. There's no easy balance here, only trade-offs. And then there is politics. Greenland is an autonomous territory within the Kingdom of Denmark, but conversations about eventual independence have been growing louder over the years. Why? Because natural resources change political imagination. Economic self-sufficiency often fuels sovereignty discussions, yet independence is not simple. It requires sustainable revenue, institutional capacity, defense arrangements, global partnerships. So Greenland stands at a crossroads. Remain closely tied to Denmark or gradually step into a more independent geopolitical role. Either path will reshape Arctic dynamics. Let me connect the dots for you. Greenland is where multiple global forces intersect: climate transformation, resource competition, shipping evolution, military strategy, sovereignty debates. Places like this rarely remain peripheral. History shows us that when geography, resources, and strategy align, attention follows. Then investment follows. Then influence follows. And eventually, rivalry follows. Not necessarily conflict, but competition. Structured, persistent, strategic. So, how will this be resolved? Not through a dramatic headline, not through a sudden geopolitical shock. Greenland's future will most likely unfold through gradual integration into the global strategic system. Here is the scenario I consider most probable. Greenland will move toward greater economic autonomy while remaining inside a Western security framework. In other words, more self-governance, deeper partnerships with elite economies, carefully managed resource development, continued strategic cooperation with NATO-aligned powers. Not a sale, not a takeover, not isolation, but alignment. Because in a world increasingly defined by supply chains and strategic geography, small regions with large importance rarely stand alone. They anchor themselves within networks of stability. And the biggest insight, Greenland is not becoming important. It already is. Most people just haven't adjusted their mental maps yet. But they will, because the feature rarely announces itself loudly. It emerges quietly at the edges before moving to the center. Yeah, that is the Untold. Until next time, stay sharp, because sometimes the places that look frozen in time are the ones shaping what comes next.